Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm really excited to deliver this presentation on advanced fire protection for data centers on behalf of Securiton International. Let me waste no further time and just tell you a little bit about Securiton. So we are a huge manufacturer and supplier of detection products, fire detection, smoke detection products. We've got a track record, well over 100 data centers that we've been involved in across the globe. And we've got real experience in designing particularly large and complex solutions involving also extinguishing for data centers. We're very specialist. We are a Swiss company. We have high production facilities in Germany, and we also have development engineers who work in Switzerland, Austria, and Germany, producing the fantastic technology that I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm also just going to show you very briefly a quick slide with our data center references. This slide grows and grows. In fact, it's hard to get all of the data actually on this slide. And for obvious reasons, sometimes it's tricky for us to talk about certain sites, certain customers. We do have some sites and case studies that I'm going to talk to you about towards the end of this presentation. But let's be clear, we are a huge supplier of fire and smoke detection systems within the data center environment, as well as other applications, but our focus today is data centers. And why it's important, we all rely on a data center, pretty much every one of us these days, whether it's for work, when we're sat at our desks, emailing or communicating via Teams or checking LinkedIn, or whether it's personally, we're just trying to use our phone to keep in contact with friends or family, or maybe do some banking. Who knows? But we all rely on data centers. And if there is downtime, if there is a disruption to that data center, that's going to impact us all. It is calculated that of a proportion of the downtime that data centers suffer, that fire contributes over 20% of that downtime. So it's a big factor. And each time a data center goes down, the average cost for just 1 minute is over $5,000, and that can add up very quickly. The recovery time is quite high before we can get a data center operating again. Whether it's a fire incident or whether it's a false alarm from something. And we'll all know there are many examples of major data center fires over the last decade. And even sadly, in one instance, some people were killed. But data centers are with us ever more so these days. They're very important. They're key to our lives. We need to help keep them operational. Before I go too far, I just wanted to do a brief introduction to myself. My name is Justin McNamara. I am the Marketing Director for Securiton International, covering the UK and Ireland. I have colleagues throughout the globe who do my job, perhaps a little bit better, but they do my job covering every territory that I think you can think of. By all means, make contact directly with me and I will pass you to my relevant colleague for your country or your territory. I've got a lot of experience. You can see that I'm not a young man. I've got a lot of experience in the fire industry, and I'm involved in the Fire Industry Association, the FIA's Fire Detection and Alarm Council. I'm also a member of the Special Interest Group looking at aspirating smoke detection systems. It's a technology that we'll discuss a little bit later on. And I've been around in the industry for a long time with much experience in all sorts of different technologies. So hopefully I'm the right man to deliver this presentation. Let's take a sort of high-level view of what we're looking at. This is an example of a data center. Let me just suggest quite a small one. But there are many different component parts of a data center, and we'll have a brief look at each one. Many different component parts that perhaps require different fire or smoke detection technologies to provide the highest level, the best level of protection. And we'll have a look at each of those in a bit more detail and talk a bit about what can be done. So the first area we're going to look at is the server room. That is the brain, if you like, the main room of the data center. Typically you'll see the server racks, the computers in these areas. They are processing all of that really important data that we want to take care of. We want to get our messages to get through. There's highly sensitive equipment in there. There is very high airflow. There will be air cooling that is moving the air around at a rapid pace, and we cannot afford any interruption. This sort of area is absolutely ideal for aspirating smoke detection that can operate at the highest level of sensitivity to provide really early alarms of impending smoke, fire. And it's also a point of note here in these rooms that we can provide localization or individualization of aspirating smoke samples. We can actually provide that really early smoke sensitivity actually within particular cabinets themselves and address those particular cabinets. I talked about air movement within these spaces, and typically we will see return air grills, potentially very large, as there is a high volume of air, cold, clean air that is being moved in these environments. And again, the detection technology of choice is certainly aspirating smoke detection. It is absolutely perfect for environments where there is air movement, where there's lots of dilution, lots of free, fresh, cool air that may be diluting incipient smoke particles. Aspirating smoke detection is absolutely ideal to pick up those very early tiny parts of smoke that may exist when there is something about to go wrong. It's also very interesting to look at things like suspended ceilings within a data center. Quite often they can end up being forgot about, but typically there'll be a lot of cabling or other important equipment that is actually within the suspended ceiling. And very typically there will also be some fairly swift air movement. And rather than perhaps look at point type smoke detectors in these areas, ASD, aspirating smoke detection, is a great solution. It will solve the problem of detecting within high airflow, but it will also make maintenance much, much easier. Trying to access a ceiling void to provide maintenance on point detectors is going to be tricky, cumbersome, intrusive, and expensive, to say the least. Aspirating can be a great solution in suspended ceiling. Equally, the reverse in the raised floor, again, potentially lots of cabling, lots of equipment, potential risk of fire. Very important to have high sensitivity early warning smoke detection using ASD, but also, again, the maintenance value here. Access typically can be done just from the aspirating smoke detector box without disruption to that raised floor that is likely very congested. And as I say, it's got lots of cabling and or sensitive equipment. The maintenance can be done safely outside of the raised floor. And dare I say, it might also be a little bit cheaper. There are other challenges that are becoming increasingly common. Battery rooms within data centers typically have used sealed lead acid batteries, but it's much more common these days for new data centers and even retrofits to use lithium-ion batteries, which present a risk of thermal runaway. There is lots that appears in the news, the press, about the potential dangers of lithium-ion batteries. The manufacture of them is certainly improving, but there is no way that we can guarantee 100% safety. And it's a risk that we need to address. At Securiton, we're able to do that with a combination of aspirating smoke detection, similar to that which we've seen within the server room itself, but then also with some gas sensors, either hydrogen or VOC, volatile organic compound sensors, that we can incorporate into our design and provide very, very early detection for battery failure of lithium-ion batteries. There's also a challenge within power generation for data centers, usually a separate room or quite often a separate building. But within the power generation area of a data center, it may be we have hot machinery, a high fuel load, potentially oil and lubricants. And it might also be that smoke detection might be too late or inappropriate in that process. We have a product called ADW that is temperature sensing that will provide early warning of potential temperature changes in, let's call them, slightly dirty, dusty, difficult, tricky environments. And again, it provides a great solution to conduct maintenance remote from the actual power generation. It's very similar to power distribution. We obviously need to be fully aware of the risks of any electrical fire that may be generated outside of the IT server equipment. Electrical fire from a power cabinet would be devastating for any data center. So here I'm suggesting that the Security aspirating smoke detector that we've seen a few times already would be absolutely perfect and ideal to provide really early warning within the power distribution areas of a data center. Last but by no means least here, we've also got to protect our people. It's no good having the best detection system in the world to provide smoke detection within the server rooms or the power distribution areas. We need to provide very good, reliable, high levels of detection within the staff rooms, the populated areas. And this is where Securiton's Securifier smoke detection equipment, comes into its own. We have a range of detectors, combined heat, smoke and CO detectors that we can connect to an addressable fire panel and provide, if you like, a holistic fire alarm system for your data center. I said it last but by no means least, but I need to also talk about the control room. It's very important that within this sort of environment that the data center as a whole, somebody has a view of everything that's happening with control equipment, detection devices. We can connect everything together and provide a main control system that can view everything, provide operation for everything and management. Simply put, we can provide a complete data center smoke fire detection system and manage and control it from one space, one point within that data center. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fire panel just for a moment. We have what we've definitely described as best-in-class fire alarm control panel. We have a fully redundant system. We can expand it pretty much limitlessly. In fact, I have a challenge that I put out to a lot of people to make sure they fully understood the limitless part of our network. We can actually provide a system that's got up to 250 devices for each loop, up to 16 addressable loops. Each of those loops can be up to 3.5 kilometers in loop length. And we can have, if we add the extinguishing modules to our panel, we can provide up to 8 extinguishing zones for each panel, put up to 32 extinguishing zones. And if you read down the list, we can actually have up to 768 Boolean functions, which are those of you who are versed in the technology. It means that we can pretty much provide cause and effect on a limitless basis with and or etc. functions. It allows us to absolutely fine-tune the cause and effect for all our devices across an entire site. One thing that I think sometimes gets glossed over is our ability to use the same tool, the same software to provide the programming for our fire panel software. So we can sit in an office, in a studio beforehand, do all the programming, get all the logic, however we wish it to be. And then we can actually use that same software, that same code that's been written to actually generate the logic on the panel, on the site itself. So it's a smooth, seamless process. And the limitlessness that I mentioned earlier is only because we can actually create a network of up to 4,000 separate panels. And I challenge anybody to provide us with a design that may need more than 4,000 panels. That would seem like a network system covering an entire country or maybe an entire continent. So I think we're fairly confident that we won't exceed that, but maybe one day I would love to. The networking of our system is truly fabulous, and to be honest, probably deserves an hour or longer presentation in its own right. And all that you would expect from a network system is possible with a Securiton Securifier network system. We'll have a look more at the other products in the portfolio that we've mentioned briefly. But before I do that, I'm just going to stick with control room and software. So I've mentioned the Securifier software. We can provide obviously the alarm management system that means that we can have really fast and intuitive responses to any fire situation. It's really simple, easy to grasp and usable software. We also have specific software for the aspirating smoke detectors using our FeederSnet software. Absolutely fantastic engineering. We can actually connect up to 100 aspirating units, ASD units together and display it on one very small 7-inch tablet. And we can scroll between the devices to see which one of those up to 100 units needs attention. It is a truly remarkable piece of software. I'd love to be able to talk more about it today, but I need to move on to talk about some of the hardware. This is a slide showing our aspirating smoke detection range. We essentially have a complete range of smoke detection, aspirating smoke detection, from the very small, the ASD 531 on the left-hand side of the screen, to the much larger ASD 535 units that are on the right-hand side. And we've got anywhere in between as well. So we provide a device that is suited to your requirements in terms of coverage, area coverage, and all of them can be programmed to be high sensitivity. If I'm thinking about EN54 Part 20, I can range from Class A holes 6 on an ASD 531 all the way up to 36 on an ASD 5354, and anywhere in between, as you can see. And each device has multiple staged alarms, so we can provide early alarms, later alarms, and forgive me, too late alarms when the smoke has just got too much and nothing has been done about it. Almost the equivalent of the obscuration, the smoke level caused by ordinary point type smoke detectors. I mentioned our linear heat offering briefly. The ADW on the left-hand side is the solid tube, either copper, steel, or Teflon tube. It's actually a pressure reading. We sense the pressure and relate that into a temperature reading to provide an alarm if there's been a temperature increase or indeed decrease in a particular area. That may be very useful in a slightly dirtier, hotter environment, let's say like power generation area. And then on the right-hand side, our two choices for more typical linear heat cable, either the D-list or the list. Essentially, this is cable. We can provide resettable linear heat. If I look at the list cable, we can run a length of up to 3.5 kilometers, which is going to cover a very large, long area. And one of the key things I like about this, aside from being addressable linear heat, is the resolution. The fact that we can go down to 0.1 degrees Celsius really helps as far as temperature monitoring is concerned. I'm then going to switch back to the Securifier panel. I'm highlighting here our 3000 range, purely and simply because it's the biggest, the flagship of our range. We can put up to 4,000 detectors on a panel, 16 loops, a loop length of 3.5 kilometers, 250 devices maximum for each loop. Really is a truly powerful, remarkable, dare I say, unique detection and extinguishing panel. And then to the right-hand side, you've got the various devices that we're able to connect to it, whether it be a smoke heat device, whether it be a smoke heat and CO device, and then the combined smoke heat sounder unit. Beneath that, we have the loop switches. We have a base for flush mounting, which can be required in some instances, and then we have the core points, whether they be surface or flush mount. We have a full BDS approved range of smoke panels and detection indicating devices. Changing topic just ever so slightly, I mentioned it earlier, it is a matter of key importance, it would seem, in data centers these days, to be aware of the dangers, potential dangers caused by lithium-ion batteries. And we have two sensors, either an HS2 hydrogen VOC, volatile organic compound sensor, or a straightforward VOC sensor that can be deployed. We will provide a design for you and make sure that we provide the true earliest warning possible of a battery failure. The last thing we want is, something like a battery to cause potential problem for the server room next door or server plant above. These sensors are finely tuned to detect that almost pre-alarm warning of a battery going into thermal runaway before it gets into fire and anything worse. So they are a great addition to Securiton's range, and dare I say it, a great addition to any data center wishing to provide the highest level of detection. I'm a great believer that products are only really part of the tale. We have some fantastic products, independently tested and approved. We have literally hundreds of case studies users who will vouch for the brilliance of our product. But what's really key is the support that we provide as well elsewhere. So I'm going to talk about a couple of slides just to give you some idea of what we're able to do. So I've mentioned this a few times, but we have lots of case studies. We have design guides. We have one, for example, specifically dedicated to data centers. We've used our experience of the hundreds of data centers that we've been involved in across the world to write a very detailed, intelligent document talking you through every aspect of a data center and the design of the detection systems. And it really is a very useful companion to every project, every specification, every discussion on a data center. But it can be downloaded free from our website, or contact me or a colleague. We'll make sure you get a copy. But we try to pass on the lessons and the experience and the knowledge that we have freely. We don't want to keep anything to ourselves. We want to help to keep everything safe, but particularly to keep data centers safe. And on top of that, and this hopefully is a real bonus, we have a team. In fact, we have a couple of teams of really experienced fire engineers, designers, who will actually put together design packages for us. So if we provide CAD drawings, outline specifications, existing AutoCAD designs, we can take care of a complete data center design, all the way through from fire panel, detectors, cool points, sounders, through to aspirating smoke detectors, maybe some specialist detection within the battery room, and some also within the power generation ring. But we can actually provide a complete package of design that is going to save you or your client a lot of time, effort, and know that some true professionals have dedicated their time to provide you with a bespoke design. Just as I'm coming to the end here, I thought I would just very quickly run through a couple of real examples. These are just a couple of the reference sites that we've been involved in. And what you'll see here is some well-known names, and then perhaps some lesser well-known names. We've installed with our partners Securiton fire detection equipment within Microsoft, within Amazon, within Google, and within the Turkcell data center in Ankara in Turkey, but also data centers in China. You'll see here we have a few examples from China Telecom, through Alibaba to Apple, and also within the Shenzhen Stock Exchange. And the list goes on all across Europe. One in our home in Switzerland, that's where Securiton's head office is. But across in Cairo and Egypt, Malaysia, throughout Europe, even in the UK and Ireland, where I'm based. We have the experience, and we really look forward to talking to you about your data center needs and how we can help. That is the end of my official presentation. I'm going to take a few questions now, I think.
So thank you, Justin, for a comprehensive presentation on ASD and Securiton's offering for data centers, a very topical theme at the moment that's going around the industry. I just have a couple further questions to go through, and I'm going to start with a question perhaps I didn't feel you necessarily touched on, but is still a very relevant challenge. Obviously, you spoke about downtime and recovery time for data centers, and that obviously is one of the biggest challenges and issues for data centers, especially with the heat release from hard disk drives, etc. But I'm interested to know how you would necessarily deal with a customer that might have differing regulations internationally. So, for example, with the US mandating sprinkler systems for fire safety. So I don't know if you can walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, I can. It's a really good question, and I apologize retrospectively for not covering it because actually it's really important. Particularly, I think a lot of data center operators do operate globally, and they'll be trying to comply with the different regulations that appear in different countries, different continents. Thankfully, the design team that we have are well versed in all the regulations, and we take particular note in a particular country. So just because it's easier for me to reference it, in Europe, we are bound by the EN54 regulations that cover all fire detection products. And then we've got to comply with the local design standards. So again, let me be specific to my location. In the UK, it's BS 5839 Part 1. But if we're working in a territory that requires American standards, whether they be UL or FM, we will make sure we comply with them. It's not something we're unused to as a global organization, but it is a very good question and a good point to raise.
Fantastic. And obviously you focused on ASD, but is that the same or similar to Vesta?
That's a great question. I love that. If somebody was to look at my background on LinkedIn, they might see why I'm laughing. But yeah, the aspirating smoke detection is the correct generic term for this technology. It's to cover a housing that contains a pump and a detector or detectors of some kind. And the true generic term is aspirating smoke detection, shortened to ASD, not any other acronym that somebody might use. But great question.
And next up we have, is your ASD restricted to your fire detection protocol?
No, good question. Not at all. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I wouldn't like it to be connected to a Securifier system. But we have vault-free contacts that can be wired into an interface to sit on anybody's fire loop, whatever the manufacturer. So we are truly open protocol in that sense.
And I think that's a really interesting point, actually, just to hover for a second. You have a lot of clients in the market across, well, a number of industries, actually, that kind of boast their integration capabilities, but actually to be integrated and to be interoperable is two very different things. So to actually be able to be open is fantastic. And that's where the true innovation and safety comes in my opinion.
Well, I would agree. And it's important to be both. Sometimes the totally integrated closed solution is what somebody wants, but not always. So it's important to be, I call it fair on these things. And I think we are. It's how we try to operate.
Exactly. And it enables the end user as well to integrate what they believe for their system is the best by integrating lots of different types of technologies rather than just a daisy chain effect. So
Absolutely.
very well raised. And obviously you spoke about how Securiton is a huge supplier of protection systems worldwide, but do you also do fire suppression and extinction systems as well?
That we don't. I should have highlighted that we don't. What we do, we partner with a very small number of specialist suppression companies. So when with that involved in a project where we can have some say in not just how the detection is designed and how the cause and effect works. If required, if requested by the client, we have specialist suppression partners, as I say, who will introduce to the project. But equally, we can work with other suppression companies if a true total integrated system is required. Again, we're nice people to do business with, so we like to offer the best of both worlds. But we don't do suppression ourselves directly.
And for the last couple of questions, I wanted to hover on a couple of the products that you mentioned. In what circumstances would, for example, your customer or your end user need a FIDES software, a FIDES net?
Okay.
Apology.
Yeah. So that's the networking software for the aspirating. for the ASD. I think, I probably almost always recommend it. What it would enable somebody to do is separate, let's say, to ASD that's networked to the main fire system, to the main fire panel. If the aspirating systems are networked to a FeederSnet display panel, and it's just a 7-inch tablet, it would allow really good control and visibility of what's happening at that very early stage of, say, a potential fire starting. So maybe when there's just little wispy bits of smoke, you get a very early alarm. Somebody can actually drill down into the detail of what's happening without, let's say, disturbing the whole fabric of the building or creating too much panic. And the FeederSnet software is so user-friendly, so easy to use. I think any data center of any size, really, with ASD in it, should consider using it, or at least exploring it.
Thank you. And lastly, you mentioned linear heat detection, and I think two options or products on that slide, but perhaps you could explain a little bit more about linear heat.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it probably should be an entire presentation on its own, or perhaps a couple of them, but we've got some really interesting technology. One is unique, that uses tube. I did mention it briefly, copper, steel, or Teflon tube. And we close that tube up, we take a pressure reading, and we use any drop or increase in pressure to relate to temperature. So particularly for areas that are not quite clean, so it might be power generation external to the data center, and you just need to see if there's an increase in temperature that may indicate a problem. It may not be a problem, but it may. Something like our ADW would be perfect. And then there is the more traditional linear heat cable that's recessable. You can address it, so you can actually have a specific address over a meter length on a cable, and that again might work well in any area that traditional smoke detection isn't necessarily the right thing. It could be power generation, transformer, anywhere really. Tunnels, cable tunnels, particularly the LIS cable is absolutely fantastic in cable tunnels.
Well, brilliant. And unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. But Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it. If anybody has any further questions or would like to find out more, obviously you can reach out to Justin directly, or you can visit the Securiton website at www.securiton.com. Thank you again, Justin.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you.